In this video, we're going to be exploring hypervigilance, what it is, what causes it, and how do you overcome it. So hypervigilance is when our nervous system has learned to feel unsafe in the environment that we're in. And for some people, that can be in pretty much any environment. So we feel like we're constantly on edge. Our body can feel anxious, irritable. We can find that we're jumpy to sudden sounds or interruptions or so on. Feel like our mind is constantly racing. And underlying all of this is really a feeling, a sense that we don't feel safe. So what causes this state of hypervigilance? It's normally a learnt response to trauma. I mean trauma in the broadest definition of trauma. So it may not necessarily be an obviously traumatic event like physical abuse or sexual abuse or being in a war zone or so on. It may also have been just growing up in an environment where we didn't get all of our emotional needs met. And we learned that the world wasn't a fully safe place. And our mind, our nervous system sped up to try to create that feeling of safety in the world around us. Now, one of the things that often happens with hypervigilance is we normalize to being in that state. That sometimes people don't even recognize how anxious they are a lot of the time. They don't realize how much their system is working to constantly try to create this feeling of safety because it's become their normal. What often also happens is we develop various coping strategies to try to manage being in this hypervigilant state. A few examples of this are constantly being busy because we're trying to distract ourselves away from feeling constantly unsafe and on edge. Another one is we may try to self-medicate the state of hypervigilance through alcohol, through drugs, through excessive exercise. Really what we're trying to do is find ways to at least temporarily change how we feel. Now, another way we can try to manage hypervigilance is by trying to constantly control and manage the environment that we're in. And then our world can become smaller because we start excluding environments that we don't feel that we can control and manage that space. If you're finding this video helpful, do subscribe and click the notification bell, and YouTube will let you know as we release more videos. So what can we do about hypervigilance? Well, the first thing is really to recognize what's happening and to stop putting our energy into these coping strategies that often ultimately make things worse. So if you recognize you're constantly trying to be busy to avoid how you feel, or you're constantly trying to change how you feel, or you're constantly trying to control the environment around you, it's time to stop doing that. We then need to cultivate that inner sense of safety that's been missing. Now, when we're children, we are entirely dependent upon our caregivers to meet our needs for us. One of the gifts, one of the blessings of being an adult is we can learn to meet those needs for ourselves. So learning to meet your core emotional need for safety will start to calm this hypervigilant state. You ultimately are learning how to regulate your own nervous system. Now, there are many ways that we can learn to do this. Practices like meditation, mindfulness, and so on can be helpful, learning to calm our mind. Learning how to recognize the patterns that we're running that are driving this state and learning to stop those patterns and better regulate our system, those can be helpful. What's also often very important is to work with the underlying emotions that may in part be driving this hypervigilance in the first place. Because when our system goes fast, it helps us disconnect from our feelings. So if those events of trauma have not been processed, and they're living in our body, they're living in our system, then as we do that emotional healing, we no longer need to be in that state of hypervigilance. So I'm curious, does this resonate with you? If it does, let me know in the comments below this video. And if you'd like to learn more about hypervigilance, do check out my book, It's Not Your Fault: Why Childhood Trauma Shapes You and How to Break Free. I break down much more the impacts of childhood trauma on our lives as adults, but also get into much more detail the things that you can learn to do to break out of this pattern of hypervigilance. Thank you for watching. I hope this has been helpful.